This is Pressers by FedNet, where news conferences from the United States Congress become podcast episodes for your listening on your time. House Democratic Caucus leaders Pete Aguilar and Ted Lieu held a weekly news conference on April 8th with colleagues from California, New York, and Oregon. They discussed the impacts of the Liberation Day tariffs, Republican vote counts, budget reconciliation, and more. The following material is protected by copyright.
Good morning. Pleased to be joined with Representatives Gray and Kennedy and Salinas here today. On behalf of the Vice Chair and I, we also are pleased to welcome the Los Angeles Dodgers to the Washington, D.C. area. Look forward to catching a game this homestand. Donald Trump has imposed the largest tax increase in 50 years on every single American. Republican incompetence is crashing the economy with reckless tariffs and bleeding the retirement accounts of Americans dry. We're watching global recession take hold because of the boneheaded policies of one person, which will cause hardworking people to lose their jobs, potentially lose their homes, and their health care. At the same time, Republicans in Congress are preparing to cut Medicaid $880 billion so they can give a massive tax cut to billionaires. They are telling us with a straight face that the economic growth will pay for these tax breaks while the economy is in a tailspin. The truth is, passing the Republican budget would be a death blow to the American economy. And the people that get caught in the crossfire of this Republican recession will be hurt most by Medicaid as a tool that Republicans want to chip away at. Congress needs to take away the keys of economic policies like tariffs from this incompetent administration and restore some stability to the economy. House Democrats are going to continue to prioritize the economic needs of the American people by working to bring down costs, make health care more affordable, and look out for everyday Americans. With that, turn it over to Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. As an American and as a veteran, my heart goes out to the 4 U.S. soldiers who tragically died in an accident in Lithuania. The Lithuanian president did a very dignified ceremony for those 4 U.S. soldiers. And when those 4 soldiers' caskets landed at Dover Air Force Base last Friday at a transfer ceremony, U.S. officials greeted them, elected officials greeted them, but Donald Trump was not there. Donald Trump instead chose to go to a golf tournament. And I'm just going to read to you what one of their persons at this ceremony said. He deployed to Iraq. His name is Blythe Potter. He's a military police corps veteran. He said, quote, I have never been so embarrassed to be an American. President Trump should have been at that transfer ceremony for the 4 fallen U.S. soldiers instead of at his golf tournament. I now want to also echo what Chairman Aguilar said about the tariffs. They are a tax on the American consumer. As all of you know, the way tariffs work is when the foreign products come to our ports, the American company that imported those products pays a tariff, not the foreign country. And what happens when this American company pays that tariff? Well, they're going to pass along those costs to the consumer, and the prices are going to increase. In poll after poll, we see that the overwhelming majority of American people oppose tariffs. There are ways to try to make competition more fair, but let's not do it by increasing prices on Americans. And their estimates are it's going to be about $3,800 per family in terms of increased costs. And then let me also now congratulate Susan Crawford for winning the Wisconsin Supreme Court race last week. What we saw there was the world's wealthiest man, Elon Musk, try to buy the election, spending over $20 million. And the people of Wisconsin figured that out, and they overwhelmingly elected Susan Crawford. So what was once Elon Musk's greatest asset, his money, has now become his greatest liability because the people now understand that he's trying to buy elections, and they overwhelmingly vote against that. And then the hands-off protests that we saw this past weekend were amazing. The American people were waking up that Trump and Republicans' policies or harming our nation. So now it is my honor to introduce my friend Adam Gray, who I had the honor of serving with in the California State Legislature. So thrilled he is now in Congress, and he represents the Central Valley.
Good morning, and thank you to Chairman Aguilar and Vice Chair Liu for inviting me to speak with you this morning. I represent California's San Joaquin Valley, the world's largest agricultural region. The President's recent announcement of tariffs on our global trade partners poses a serious risk to farmers in the San Joaquin Valley and across the country. The last time blanket tariffs went into effect under President Trump's first administration, California farmers lost an estimated $683 million in crop revenue. The most significant losses were concentrated in tree nuts and dairy products, among others, which are top exports from the San Joaquin Valley. In fact, the California delegation recently received a letter from ag industry leaders in California pleading with Congress to support common sense measures that will protect fair competition for their products and defend our nation's food supply. This group of producers represent more than 400 commodities and billions of dollars of revenue. They warn of uncertain market conditions, disrupted business operations, increased costs associated with retaliatory tariffs. This all poses a significant risk to family-owned farms, which account for over 95% of American agricultural operations. I grew up in the ag industry. My family owned and operated a dairy supply store. My grandparents grew pistachios like many Valley families. I know personally how tight budgets are. I know how one bad season can derail an operation for years. These aren't just individual farmers or business owners who will lose jobs or shutter businesses. These are entire communities like mine in the Central Valley who rely on the ag industry to power their economy. Rather than work with Congress to make precise, strategic changes to our trade policy, the President has decided to impose sloppy blanket tariffs and stuck American farmers with the bill. I'm ready to work with anyone and everyone who is serious about rising above partisan politics to protect our ag communities from the impacts of tariffs. We must do something now. Our farmers deserve it. Our communities deserve it. With that, I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Representative Tim Kennedy.
Morning. First, I want to thank Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar and Vice Chair Ted Liu for not only bringing us together this morning, but for their continued leadership on this issue and so many other issues. Before Trump's tariffs plunged us and the entire world into chaos, Western New Yorkers that I represent were sounding the alarm on the president's trade war. As a representative of a border community in Buffalo, in the Niagara region, and the co-chair of the Northern Border Caucus, families in my region know how important our ties are with our Canadian neighbors. In my district, trade with Canada supports tens of thousands of jobs, nearly 30,000 jobs, and brings in over $500 million in purchases by Canadians every year. Across the border, there's $1.3 trillion of commerce every single year. Billions of dollars a day, supporting states all across the northern border, but all across our great country. Again, in Western New York, Canadians pour over the border, whether it's going to a Bills game or a Sabres game or shopping or using our restaurants, sleeping in our hotels. Over 40% of the 5 million enplanements out of the Buffalo Niagara International Airport are Canadian citizens. Our economies are reliant upon each other and benefit from the tremendous relationship that we have economically, culturally, historically, and presently. However, Trump's tariffs are putting our hardworking families in Western New York at risk, and it's hurting our entire national and international economy. Cross-border traffic is down by double digits from last year, robbing small businesses across the country of tourism dollars. Tariffs that are being put in place across the board, these blanket tariffs, including on things like lumber, that are hurting home ownership, especially new homeowners. They're also stymieing development. and other industries, including steel fabrication, auto manufacturing, craft brewing, logistics. Every industry across the board is worrying about supply chain disruption, skyrocketing operating costs, and keeping their employees on the payroll. Businesses are going to be hurt by these tariffs. Jobs are going to be lost in our country because of these tariffs. Because our economy is so tightly intertwined with Canada's, people in my district and across the country are being hit right in their pocketbook already. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is golfing at his own club while trillions of dollars are wiped away from American citizens and hardworking families and their retirements that they were dependent upon as we risk this Republican recession. But Trump's tariffs aren't just robbing folks of their retirement savings and driving up the cost of housing, groceries, clothes, and gas. His indiscriminate blanket tariffs are putting our allies on the same playing field as our adversaries. Trump inherited an improving economy with low unemployment, and he crashed it. He inherited the strong alliance and friendships we have with Canada, with our European allies, with our global allies, and he crushed them. Trump's tariffs send a message to our friends and allies that we no longer are the reliable partners that they can depend upon. And hardworking families in Western New York and across the country are paying the price. They are setting our nation down a dangerous path of chaos, stealing from American families and jeopardizing our alliances, all to justify tax cuts for the richest Americans. This is wrong, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to sit back and hang tough like the president suggests we do. We're going to continue to use our voices and demand an end to Trump's tariffs and get back to work creating an economy that benefits all hard-working families across this great country. With that, I yield to a wonderful representative, Salinas.
Well, thank you, Chair Aguilar, Vice Chair Liu, and everyone for being here today. As my colleagues have already pointed out, President Trump's tariffs have created chaos and uncertainty across the country and around the world. Many Americans have spent the last few days watching their retirement savings go up in smoke and bracing for a recession or possibly worse. But instead of doing something to stop the bleeding, Donald Trump spent the weekend, as has already been mentioned, playing golf with billionaires. In case there was any confusion about where his priorities are, he clearly is more interested in improving his golf game than improving the economy. Trump's reckless and harmful approach to tariffs will devastate states like Oregon, where our economy relies heavily on trade. From wine to wood products, Oregon exports billions of dollars worth of homegrown goods every year, and we import billions more. All things considered, Trump's tariffs are going to raise taxes on Oregon businesses and families to a tune of about $7.5 billion per year. So whether you're a hazelnut grower in the Willamette Valley or a small business owner in Salem, hardworking Americans, not foreign countries, will end up footing the bill. And those costs add up. Experts have estimated that the average family will pay about $73 more per week, or close to $4,000 more per year for everyday necessities. It's frankly reprehensible that this president is choosing, and I want to be clear, this is a choice, to play roulette with people's hard-earned money and roll the dice on whether our folks can afford food, pay the rent, send their kids to college, or even retire right now. And don't be fooled. This is not a market correction. It is a market disruption of the highest magnitude. I won't stand for it. My colleagues will not stand for it. House Democrats are united in our opposition to Trump's tariff tyranny, and we will continue to speak out against his attacks on working families. What we won't do is let Republicans in Congress off the hook. They have the power to stop these tariffs right now, and they're refusing to fulfill their constitutional duty. Our message is clear. Democrats will not bow down to billionaires. We will fight back with everything we have to protect our constituents from the great Republican ripoff. Thank you. And I yield back to Chair Aguilar.
Thank you, Andrea. I want to thank Tim, Andrea, and Adam for joining us here today. Questions? Nick, it's your birthday, so I got to give you the first one. It's a contractual obligation, I think.
Thanks, sir. Question for Congressman Gray.
He's not available for questions.
Would you vote to repeal all of the tariffs that Trump rolled out last week?
Yeah, I'll let Adam speak for himself here too. But I do think that there are legislative tools that the caucus is looking at. We believe that this is boneheaded, wrong-headed policies that the president is enacting. We look forward and we want to work in a bipartisan way. And I would point to the Cantwell-Grassley, effort in the Senate is one bipartisan effort. I know there are others, and there could be more in the future. But House Democrats want to work to lower the costs that Americans face. And these wrong-headed policies and these tariff policies put everyone at risk and raise everyone's costs. And I'll let Adam answer.
I appreciate the question. As I said in my earlier remarks, the administration has taken a blunt, broad approach to this instead of actually digging in and looking at each individual tariff, each individual market. This has huge impacts on agriculture in the San Joaquin Valley. My office has been working on some legislation related specifically to agriculture and those kind of our top import-export markets as a way to require congressional review and approval there. Certainly support what's going on in the Senate in bipartisan fashion. I'm ready to support bipartisan solutions in the House as well as pursue individual legislation if that's necessary. But I just think we've got to get serious about this, and we need serious people here in Washington. This is going to impact food prices across the country. It's certainly going to devastate farming communities like mine.
I'd also say Ranking Member Meeks has an effort that would turn off the emergency that President Trump is using here, claiming fentanyl as a reason for tariffs for Canada and Mexico. Thanks. Michael, then Nika.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House conservatives are threatening to vote against the Republican budget blueprint to advance President Trump's agenda. We've seen plenty of examples of Republicans flipping on their votes at the last minute, and I don't want to go down the list. But at this point, have you and the caucus come to expect that most House Republicans will ultimately support measures on the floor that they say that they oppose in the press?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's pretty clear that House Republicans generally say one thing when they're in an elevator with us or with you, and then they do something else when they are given an opportunity to vote on the floor. We're looking for reasonable Republicans to work with. We just haven't found many. That's the problem. Speaker Johnson is pretty good at counting to 200, but he clearly can't count much beyond that without Donald Trump putting his thumb on the scale. That's why he's bringing him down to 1600 Pennsylvania. That's why it's a full court press. But many of these Republicans who say that they are no votes will ultimately cave. Generally, the only one who we can believe is Thomas Massey, who's principled, and if he says he's a no, he's going to be a no. Everyone else generally will say one thing until they get a phone call from the president. Mika.
Yesterday, Leader Jeffries said that he's still exploring some legal avenues in the Texas special election against the governor. What legal pathway do you think that there is, and are you still supportive of potentially, urging him to move this race up if possible?
I believe he said that before the governor put the special election date.
Last night.
It was after last night. The governor's put the special for November. If there are options, I'll let Leader Jeffries and the DCCC, speak to that. I don't have anything more on that.
Oriana with Notice. The House is voting today on Darrell Issa's bill to stop nationwide injunctions, and then leadership I know is whipping against that bill. But just 2 years ago, Democrats were calling for kind of similar judicial reform following Judge Kaczmarek abortion pill ruling, which also involved nationwide injunctions. So isn't judicial reform an area where there should be some sort of bipartisan path?
Well, I think it's clear, and Republicans were opposed to any reform efforts when this affected women's reproductive care and mifepristone in the North Texas ruling that you're talking about. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Lieu to speak in his kind of judiciary capacity, but House Democrats see this effort for what it is. This is an effort for Republicans to push back on Judge Boasberg giving a ruling that they disagree with. By the way, that's a judge who was appointed by a Republican president, elevated by a Democratic president. And this is a concern that we have, that Republicans just aren't playing fair. Just like elections, they believe the results only when their person wins. They don't believe the results of the election when the opposing party wins. Democrats are willing to engage and have conversations about a wide range of issues in the committees that have jurisdiction, but not just when it's a president we agree with or a president we disagree with. That's the unfortunate part in the standard that Republicans have set.
Thank you. So let me give you an example of why injunctions are helpful. Because when the law is violated, sometimes it doesn't make sense to only say, okay, well, we're going to let that violation of law not occur in this area, but let it occur everywhere else. So let's take birthright citizenship. A federal judge has basically said, look, the Constitution is pretty clear. If you're born in the U.S., you're an American, and I'm going to say you can't change that. If that only applied, let's say, in one state and nowhere else, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have 49 other plaintiffs and these 49 other states also bringing the same exact lawsuit, and it's very inefficient. So you have a nationwide injunction, and then that can be appealed if the opposing party doesn't like it, and eventually that could get to the Supreme Court. So that's why you have injunctions. It just makes a lot more sense where there's a violation of a law to have that law be held nullified in every place. And it depends on the case. So judges have discretion to decide, do I want to make this a nationwide injunction or not? And I think that flexibility should remain with judges.
Last question.
See, that's a much better answer. He's a real lawyer. Cassie?
I wanted to ask you about this, back and forth on the Republican side about the proxy voting and the discharge petition that Democrats supported. Now talking about this live dead pairing. I mean, realistically, can Democrats even consider lending a vote to someone who might miss across the aisle? I mean, do you see this as an unsuccessful path to trying to get proxy voting?
This is Speaker Johnson doing everything he can to cut a deal just to survive the day. He needs to unlock the floor to pass a rule so he can pass a tax cut for billionaires at the expense of cutting Medicaid. In order to do that, he's willing to give Rep. Luna everything up to proxy voting, apparently. So this is a fake and phony effort. Democrats won't participate in this. We won't be voting for the rule. We won't be engaging in this pairing effort. It's a complete show. It's disrespectful to the members who have put so much work into this. Representative Pedersen, joining with Representative Luna, we stand ready to ensure that Congress is a place where parents can do this important work. This was a pretty modest bill, 12 weeks right after childbirth seems like the bare minimum that we can do to help support young families like Rep. Peterson and Rep. Luna. It's unfortunate that Representative Luna is walking away from the bipartisanship that we had in this effort. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe and tell your friends about us. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited.